The room was quiet. Just him, a girl in a blue hoodie, and silence. Then his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, until the voice whispered, "The girl beside you is lying." Damien Reese didn't startle easily. He didn't believe in coincidence, luck, or ghost stories. But the voice, raspy, low, unhurried, froze something inside him. He turned his head slightly. The girl was still sitting beside him on the leather couch, legs curled under her like she lived there, her hoodie bunched at the sleeves, pale hair tucked into the collar. She stared ahead at the thick glass window overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Unaware. Or pretending to be. He didn't speak. Didn't ask who it was. "She's not who she says she is," the voice continued. "If you leave this room with her, you'll lose more than money." Then silence. The line went dead. Damien lowered the phone slowly, eyes narrowing. He had met her 2 hours ago. She called herself Jules. No last name. Claimed to have urgent information about a data breach in one of his companies, Glasswater Capital. She'd shown up outside the building, no appointment, and somehow managed to slip past security without triggering a single protocol. That should have been his first red flag. He hadn't wanted to hear her out. But she'd said something then that had gotten his attention. "You think the leak is coming from inside," she'd said. "It's not. You're being played." Now, with the phone still warm in his hand, he shifted in his seat and studied her profile. She didn't flinch. Didn't even glance at him. He cleared his throat. "Tell me again," he said, voice low. "How you got this intel?" She looked at him then. Her eyes were the color of ash, tired but too sharp for someone in their early 20s. "I already told you. I worked freelance for a private security firm. I had access to logs no one else saw. I saw a pattern. Traced it back to one of your shell holdings in Zurich. Transfers, anomalies, quiet, clean. Why bring it to me? Because I don't want to see you buried." She said it without blinking. Damien leaned forward. "You don't know me." Jules stared at him, something flickering in her expression. "Not everything needs a reason you'd understand." The billionaire sat back, his mind grinding through the possibilities. Everything about her was wrong. Wrong clothes. Wrong tone. Wrong place. And now, this call. Someone watching him. Or her. He swiped through his phone. No caller ID. No trace. He stood. She stiffened. "Where are we going?" she asked. "I'm taking you to someone," he replied. "To who?" "A friend," he lied. She looked like she was about to argue, but she didn't. She rose silently, hands in the hoodie pockets. As they stepped into the private elevator, Damien keyed in a manual override code. The numbers blinked red, then green. Only 2 people knew that sequence. As the doors slid shut, he felt it again, that tight coil in his chest. The sense that someone had turned the pieces of the board while he wasn't looking. "Who called you?" she asked suddenly. Damien looked at her. "No one." Her jaw clenched. "You hesitated." "No. I calculated." She stared at him. "Then calculate this. Whoever tipped you off is scared. That means I'm close." The elevator hummed downward. At sublevel -3, the doors opened into a corridor lined with dark steel and security cameras. Jules stepped out beside him but said nothing as they passed biometric scanners and reinforced doors. Inside a sealed room with no visible exits, a tall man in a gray turtleneck stood waiting. Henrik Vale. Former CIA, now Damien's private director of risk. Henrik raised a brow when he saw the girl. "This her?" Damien nodded. "Run a full trace. Start now." Jules backed up half a step. "You're making a mistake." Henrik moved fast, stepping forward and slipping a cold band around her wrist. It beeped once, locking her location and pulse to the room's biometric system. "You think I'm lying," she said, voice shaking. "Then tell me, how did I know about Zurich?" "I don't know," Damien said, flat. Yet. He turned to leave. Jules shouted after him. You think your enemies play fair? You think this is about stocks and data breaches? This is bigger than you, Damien. He paused. Then make me understand, he said without turning. Jules locked eyes with Henrik. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Glass water is just the surface. The real breach is in your private trust. Henrik looked up sharply. Damien froze. No one outside his circle even knew about that. He stepped back into the room, eyes darkening. What do you know about my trust? Jules was breathing harder now. There's a second beneficiary on the contract. One you didn't authorize. It was inserted 6 weeks ago, by someone inside your legal team. You're being set up to lose everything the moment your name hits probate. Who? He asked. She looked at him then, calm and certain. Your brother. Damien's blood ran cold. He hadn't spoken to Elias in 9 years. Before he could react, Henrik's watch lit up. A silent ping. Unauthorized access, elevator override. Someone else was coming down. Too late. The lights in the corridor flickered once. Then the emergency lockdown seal began to slide into place. Damien turned to Henrik. Secure the room. But Henrik was already moving to the control panel. Then the fire suppression system hissed. Jules's face went pale. They're not coming for me. They're coming for you. And the door behind them exploded inward. Smoke poured through the blown-out doorway like a living thing, curling around the edges of the shattered steel frame. Henrik shoved Damien back and drew the sleek pistol from beneath his jacket in one smooth motion. Jules dropped to the floor, arms over her head. Damien didn't flinch, he watched. 2 figures stepped through the smoke. Both wore matte black tactical gear, faces hidden behind ballistic masks. Silent, methodical, professional. Not hired muscle. Not amateurs. Back. Henrik barked, firing a warning shot into the floor. The first figure hesitated. The second raised a hand, 2 fingers up, a signal. Then they split, one advancing toward the corner where Jules crouched, the other pivoting toward Damien. Henrik moved fast. He put 2 rounds center mass into the closer one, no hesitation. The impact knocked the figure back a step, but he didn't fall. Armor. Heavy grade. Military spec. Damn it, Henrik growled. Damien yanked Jules up from the ground. Move. She didn't argue. They sprinted out through the secondary door as Henrik provided cover fire, every shot echoing like a hammer in the confined space. Do you have another exit? She asked breathlessly. Sublevel 4. Freight corridor. They ran down a tight concrete stairwell. Behind them, gunfire barked once, twice, then silence. Henrik had stayed behind. They didn't have time to think about that. The freight corridor was long and dim, illuminated only by red emergency lights. The hum of the generators vibrated through the walls. Somewhere far above, sirens began to wail. Jules glanced at Damien. You think this is about Zurich? It's not. He didn't answer. She grabbed his arm mid-run. Someone wants you off the board. Entirely. No comeback. They rounded a corner. At the end of the corridor, a steel door stood open just enough to let in slivers of moonlight. Outside. Street access. They ran harder. And then, footsteps behind them. Fast. Precise. Jules shoved Damien ahead. Go. But he stopped and turned. For a second, he saw his own hesitation in her eyes. Not fear. Strategy. One of the masked operatives had caught up, weapon raised. Jules was in the line of fire. Damien didn't think. He lunged forward, catching the attacker mid-charge, slamming him against the wall with the full force of a man used to taking control by force when necessary. The gun clattered to the floor. They struggled. The operative was younger, stronger, but Damien had leverage and fury. Jules didn't waste the opening. She grabbed the pistol, turned, and fired once, into the attacker's leg. He dropped with a muffled groan. She looked at Damien, chest heaving. Now. They burst through the door into the alley behind the hotel. Trash bins. Puddles. The sour smell of the city at night. A black SUV idled across the street. Without breaking stride, Damien pulled a key fob from his pocket. The SUV chirped, unlocked. They dove inside. Damien peeled onto the street as Jules slammed the door shut behind her. They didn't speak until the third red light. Damien looked over. Tell me everything. Jules exhaled. You already know your brother's involved. That's not news. I haven't spoken to Elias in 9 years, Damien muttered. He was cut off. No access. No stake. That's what you thought, she said. He shot her a glance. Why would he come after me now? She hesitated. Because you're about to close the Authry's deal. He froze. That's classified. Not to him. Authry's Holdings was more than a merger. It was a back-channel consolidation of 4 of the most powerful cybersecurity firms on the eastern seaboard. And the day the deal closed, Damien's private control over billions in infrastructure data would go from theoretical to absolute. If you die before the papers are signed, she continued, Elias inherits just enough voting leverage through that inserted clause in your trust. And someone's backing him. Someone bigger. Who? She met his eyes. I don't know. Not yet. He didn't like that answer. But he didn't call her on it. The city blurred by as they headed uptown. Every streetlight was a ticking metronome. Every alley a shadow. Finally, he pulled into an underground garage beneath a building with no signage. One of his safe spaces. No staff. No records. He parked. Killed the engine. Why come to me? He asked again. I told you. No. Why you? Why does a girl like you put herself in the middle of a billionaire's war with his ghost of a brother? She sat quietly for a moment. Then, because Elias killed my sister. Damien stared. She was a researcher, Jules said, voice thin now. Hired on a black contract to analyze metadata anomalies in the Zurich node. She found something. Went to report it. 2 days later, she was found dead. Ruling said overdose. I found encrypted files on her cloud drive. She left a name, Reese. She turned her head toward him. So I followed it. And I found you. Damien sat back. The weight of her words settled like ash. He didn't ask for proof. He didn't need to. Her face told the story. And still, one question burned brighter than the rest. How did you know where I'd be tonight? He asked. She looked at him. I didn't. Damien blinked. She continued. I waited outside Marlowe because I knew someone would come for you. Someone always does. I didn't expect to be let in. I just hoped I'd get close enough to warn you. But the call. That wasn't me, she said softly. I didn't call you. They both froze. He reached for his phone again. Still no trace of the number. No message. Nothing. Whoever had called him was still watching. Suddenly, Jules's eyes widened. She reached for the glove compartment. Where's your backup device? What? Your off-grid phone. You've got one. I know you do. Damien frowned. In the safe room. You've been tracked. He froze. Then, a soft ping echoed from his center console. They both looked. GPS alert. Unauthorized beacon. Damien slowly opened the compartment. Inside was a thin black card. Smooth. Seamless. One he'd never seen before. Jules swallowed. That's not mine. He lifted it. On the back, written in perfect serif font, were the words. You have 24 hours to transfer control. Beneath it, a single name. Elias Reese. Then, the card beeped, once. And began to glow. The glow intensified, faint at first, then pulsing with a sharp, iridescent flicker. Damien dropped the card onto the floor mat like it burned. Jules was already moving, pressing her palm flat to the dashboard. "Out!" she yelled. They scrambled from the SUV just as the vehicle's interior lit up with a dull blue pulse. Damien barely had time to slam the steel door of the garage shut behind them before the flash hit, muted by inches of concrete but still enough to make the walls vibrate. Inside the car, the card had disintegrated into ash. Smoke curled through the air vents. No flames. No debris. Just nothing. Damien stared through the reinforced glass, breathing hard. "What the hell was that?" he asked. Jules checked her pulse and wiped her face with her sleeve. "RF microcapacitor. Short-range EMP. Custom. Not meant to kill you. Just wipe everything inside." "And the message?" "A warning." Damien turned to her. "From Elias?" She looked up. "No. From whoever's bankrolling him." For a moment, the silence returned, the kind that suffocates a conversation with more questions than answers. Then Damien's voice dropped, quiet and lethal. "I want to know who just threatened me inside one of my own secure buildings. And I want to know how they knew about the Zurich node, the trust clause, and that I keep backup devices in the safe room." Jules hesitated. "I can't trace the signal alone." "Then we get someone who can." He tapped his watch, opening a secure line. The call pinged once. Then again. Voicemail. He tried another number. This time, it connected. A calm, heavily accented voice answered. "Reese. It's me." "I know." Damien frowned. "Where are you?" "You're compromised." "Who's with you?" "A friend." "Meet me." The voice paused. "You sure that's wise?" "No. But I'm out of patience." He ended the call. Jules studied him. "You trust that guy?" Damien gave her a long look. "I don't trust anyone." They left the garage and crossed the street to a nondescript brownstone. Inside was another layer of privacy, a sub-level suite he hadn't used in years. Triple-keyed. Lead-lined. Dead quiet. He handed Jules a water bottle, sat across from her at the table, and folded his hands. "Let's start over," he said. "You worked for who?" She leaned back. "Cipher Group. Private data defense firm. Mostly hired by governments and three-letter agencies, but off-the-books work paid more. They used me to test system holes, ethically, supposedly." "How old were you?" 19 when I started. 22 when I quit." "Why'd you leave?" "My sister's death. And they didn't investigate. They covered it up." "Why?" She didn't answer at first. Then, "Because Elias paid them more." A low hum buzzed at the edge of Damien's thoughts. He stood and paced once. "I need access to the Zurich logs," he said. "The raw data. No filters." "I have it. On a drive. But it's off-grid. Hidden." "Where?" Her eyes flicked up. "Brooklyn." He stiffened. "You hid blackmail material in Brooklyn?" "I didn't think I'd be chased through your sub-basement by death squads," she snapped. He said nothing for a beat. Then sighed. "All right. We go now." It was after midnight when they pulled up outside a row of shuttered storefronts in Gowanus. Jules led the way down a narrow alley lit only by the weak amber of a flickering street lamp. She crouched near a boarded-up door and knocked 3 times. Sharp, soft, sharp. The door creaked open. A bearded man with half-moon glasses squinted out. "You're late." "Still breathing," Jules replied. "Not by much," he muttered, then turned and walked back inside. The place was a dusty former print shop. Ancient machines lined the walls, now stacked with cables, servers, and monitors. At the center of the room sat a single glowing tower surrounded by half a dozen screens. Damien scanned the space. "You trust him." "More than most." The man, who called himself Mads, dropped into a wheeled chair and pulled on a headset. What exactly am I decrypting? Jules stepped forward and removed a flash drive from a chain around her neck. Zurich node logs. 2 terabytes. Mads whistled. You always bring me the good stuff. He inserted the drive, typed rapidly, and within seconds, lines of encrypted data scrolled across the screen. Damien stood behind him, watching. Most of it looked like noise. Until Mads paused. There, he said. See that sequence? He enlarged a cluster of code blocks. This isn't data traffic. It's a piggyback stream. Someone was using your Zurich node to smuggle micropackets through a banking VPN. Where was it going? Damien asked. Multiple destinations. But the biggest jump leads here. He tapped the screen. An offshore fund registered in Nauru. Shell accounts. Damien asked. More like Matryoshka accounts, one inside the other. Thousands of them. All scrubbed. Mads kept scrolling. But here's the wild part, look at the beneficiary code. He enlarged a string of numbers and letters. This isn't just a clone of your trust clause. It's a full override key. Damien stared. An override on my trust. It gets worse, Mads added. It was activated 2 hours ago. Jules sat back, visibly shaken. Damien's voice was low. Activated by who? Mads blinked. I can't get the name. Just the terminal signature. Then give me that. He printed a string of hex code. Damien leaned in. He knew that code. Had seen it only once. In his father's old records. The terminal signature was tied to a server in Geneva. His family's original holdings. The place Elias had sworn to never touch. Mads spoke up. You've got a bigger problem now. Damien looked over. Bigger than being gutted from inside my own legacy? Mads turned the screen. Surveillance footage played, time-stamped only minutes ago. A traffic cam near the brownstone. 2 men in tactical gear. One holding something. A phone. The screen lit up with a map. Jules stared. That's this building. The feed cut to black. Then a new message popped up on Mads' terminal. The girl lies with every truth. You have until sunrise. Damien didn't speak. He turned slowly to Jules. Her face had gone pale. That's not from me. No, he said. But someone thinks it is. And then the lights went out. The room plunged into darkness, broken only by the faint red glow from Mads' backup monitor. A low hum vibrated through the walls, a surge, not from the grid, but something closer. Intentional. Mads cursed and spun in his chair. They hit the junction. We're on battery. Damien's voice cut through the dark. Jules, how long has your drive been active? Since I walked in, she whispered. Why? They're not tracing me. They're tracing you. A muffled crack sounded from outside, metal on metal. Jules backed against the wall, scanning the exits. Damien reached under his coat, pulling free a matte black firearm with a suppressor already mounted. He checked the chamber without looking. Mads dove behind one of the printing presses, yanking up a floor hatch. You've got 20 seconds, tops. Basement tunnel leads to the old freight line. It's dry. You'll pop out 6 blocks north. Damien grabbed Jules's wrist. She didn't resist. They dropped through the hatch just as the front entrance exploded inward, splinters of old wood and sparks of magnesium lighting the dark like war. The tunnel was cold, narrow, and thick with dust. Rats scattered ahead of them, their shadows slicing across the walls. Jules moved fast, but Damien was faster. He knew what it meant to run when you didn't know who was chasing you. As they reached a rusted access gate, Damien's burner phone buzzed in his pocket. Unknown number. He stared at it for a second too long. You shouldn't, Jules said. He answered anyway. The voice on the other end was calm. Male. Older. Damien. You keep moving, But you've forgotten something. What? Every tunnel leads somewhere. But only one leads back. The line went dead. The phone vibrated again. This time, it displayed a GPS coordinate. A park. In the Upper West Side. Marked with a time. 3:13 a.m. What did they say? Jules asked. Damien looked at her. They want a meeting. That's insane. I've agreed to worse. They surfaced through a rusted maintenance door behind a pawnshop, the sky above just beginning to bruise with the faintest hint of dawn. The city was quiet in that haunted, empty way it only ever got between 3 and 4 in the morning, when the night owls were asleep and the day people hadn't yet begun. He flagged down a private transport, an armored town car embedded with counter-surveillance measures, and they rode in silence, weaving through the city like ghosts. Jules watched the skyline drift by. You think he'll be there? Elias? Damien asked. No. He won't show. He never does the dirty work. Then who will? That's what I intend to find out. At 3:12 a.m., the car pulled to a silent curb near the edge of a desolate park, empty except for the sound of wind rustling leaves. Streetlights flickered like they were afraid to stay on too long. Damien stepped out. Jules moved to follow. He stopped her. Stay here. You shouldn't go alone. That's the point. She hesitated, then nodded, and he stepped into the shadows. There, on a bench beneath a dead tree, sat a man in a wide-brimmed hat and a long overcoat. The figure didn't move. Didn't rise. Just waited. Damien approached, footsteps silent on the pavement. I expected someone with less melodrama, he said coldly. The man spoke without turning. I expected someone more cautious. Damien circled to face him. The stranger was in his 60s, maybe older. Weathered face. Eyes like coin slits. No warmth. No malice. Just function. You used my brother, Damien said. The man nodded. He volunteered. And you'll understand why. I doubt it. No. You will. He held out a sealed envelope. Thick. Heavier than it should be. Damien took it. Opened it. Inside were photographs. Dozens. At first, they meant nothing. Images of offshore documents, warehouse shipments, financial transfers in Central Asia. But then the names surfaced. Reese Holdings. Authries. Cipher Group. And beneath all of it, a signature. Not Elias's. His own. Damien's throat went dry. This is doctored. It isn't. I've never seen half of these deals. Because someone did them as you. The signature. The authorization keys. Even your voice, replicated. Deep channels. Hidden proxies. 4 years. Damien looked up, fury darkening his face. You're telling me someone impersonated me to construct a false global shell network? To turn you into the architect of your own destruction, the man said. So when the final phase is triggered, it looks like you stole, laundered, weaponized. Final phase. The man reached into his coat and handed him a second card. This one bore a crest. A trident over a serpent. Damien's heart stopped. He knew that symbol. It was the same one found in the lost records from his father's hidden vault. A crest for a group whispered about in financial ghost corridors. A group no one had ever proven existed. Elias didn't start this, the man said softly. But he let it in. He opened the vault for them. And now, they're almost finished. Finished with what? Damien whispered. The man smiled, thin and without joy. Replacing you. Before Damien could move, the man placed something into his hand. A metal chip. Old. Scarred. This holds the original terminal signature. The one Elias used to frame you. Then the man stood, adjusted his coat, and began walking away into the fog. Damien called after him. Who are you? The man didn't turn. I'm the one who wanted you to hear the phone ring. He vanished into the trees. Damien stared at the chip in his hand. Cold. Silent. He turned back toward the car, his mind reeling, throat burning with rage, confusion, and the brutal clarity of betrayal. He slid back into the vehicle. Jules looked at him. Well. He dropped the chip onto her lap. Run it. Find out what it holds. I want names, dates, times, locations. I want to know how deep this goes. Her eyes widened as she studied the chip. Where did you get this? A ghost. They drove in silence again, the city starting to glow faintly through the horizon. Then, without warning, Jules flinched. Her hand shot to her temple. A sharp gasp. What is it? Damien asked, alarmed. She blinked hard. I don't know. Something's wrong. My head. She doubled over. Damien reached for her, but it was too late. She looked up. And her eyes. They were no longer the same. For a heartbeat he thought she had died standing up. Jules's gaze had gone slick and depthless, pupils swallowing the whites, a sudden night in her skull. The car's interior screens shivered with static and then resolved into a single line of text that did not belong to any manufacturer Damien had ever paid. Initiating Reese Trust Override. Stand by. Look at me, he ordered. Her breathing hitched. A thin ribbon of blood traced from her nostril to her lip. She tried to focus, mouth forming words that broke in the middle. There's something. He caught the glint behind her left ear when the hoodie slipped, not just a scar. A seal. The kind biotech surgeons leave when they intend no one to notice. Cipher, he said under his breath. He had paid them once to find holes. Elias had paid them to make some. Jules's fingers clawed at the air, then clenched in his lapel. Damien, don't let me touch you. Don't. The console chimed again. Identity token matched. Transfer. Elias Reese. He ripped the car offline and slammed the isolation switch. It made no difference. The screen's cursor ticked forward, steady as a metronome. 11%. 28%. 36%. He yanked open the glove compartment and pulled a palm-sized device, a field disruptor Henrik favored in ugly places. He barely thought, just thumbed the cap and pushed the needle into the soft tissue at the base of her skull. Jules arched, a sound like a broken radio stuttering out of her. The scent of ozone filled the cabin, the displays flickered and stalled. 44%. 44%. Then a new line. Neural pathway error. Retrying. Her eyes flashed, black to gray, black again, like storm clouds fighting the sun. He held her while she shook, feeling the slight, human weight of her against the hard fact of everything else. When the last tremor passed, the black receded. She sagged, half-conscious, a light sheen of sweat turning her face into something glassy and younger than she'd let him see. The screens went dead. Silence rang like a bell. Stay with me, he said, more prayer than command. She blinked, and this time there was someone behind the eyes looking back. I didn't know, she whispered. I swear, I didn't know. I believe you. He did. For the first time all night, he said something without running it through 3 filters first. The shelter under the fake dry cleaner had been built when fear had the dignity to be honest. Its walls were thick and ugly enough to keep the world out. Mads wired the medical rig with a hybrid of hospital-grade calm and hacker impatience. The neurointerpreter floated over Jules's temple like a halo made by a thief. This mesh is clever, he said, eyes flicking left to right across a river of numbers. It doesn't store the payload. It is the payload. They trained her brain to recognize yours the way a lock recognizes a key. Damien didn't look away from Jules. Can you turn the lock the other way? Mads chewed his lip. Maybe not. But I can listen while it tries to open again. And if I'm very lucky, I can hear the person knocking. Jules exhaled a laugh that hurt. I never wanted to be useful to anyone. You are, Damien said. Just not how they meant. She closed her eyes. Mads's hands moved. The chip from the park, old and scarred and heavy with implication, was already in his reader, decrypting in nested spirals. Behind the walls, the city turned, oblivious. A tone pinged in the medical bay. Mads swore softly. They're pinging her again. See it. A handshake, subepidermal, narrowband, encryption so paranoid it's practically Catholic. Their server wants to finish the job. Let them try, Damien said. But before they do, route everything through the chip. Why? Because whoever gave me that chip wants me to see them. Mads hesitated for the length of one long breath. Then his fingers flew. Fine. I'm making a man-in-the-middle out of your ghost. If this works, the handshake they think they have with her will actually be with us. Lines of green text crawled. A counter crept across the top of the screen. Handshake initiated. 3%. 19%. 41%. Jules gripped the edge of the cot. I can feel it. It's like someone trying to remember my name from another room. Let me, Mads murmured. His voice softened, coaxing the data like it could be calmed. He made a series of edits that looked like magic and were only skill. The chip's far end bloomed, first a signature, then an emblem. The trident over a serpent unfurled on the screen like an old flag. Hello, Damien said to a room that could not answer. There you are. Everything happened at once. The walls shook with the echo of a door upstairs that no one but them knew existed. The shelter's old metal bones thrummed. Mads's monitor flashed as a new path opened, an address not in New York, not in America. Geneva. The server where their father's legacy had learned to wear someone else's face. And a voice boomed out of the speaker array, distorted, but not enough. Elias. I see you, brother. Jules flinched. Damien did not. You can see a great many things from a safe distance, Damien said. Safety is relative, Elias replied. Tell the girl to stop resisting. This will be easier. Damien glanced at Mads. Mads shook his head infinitesimally. Keep him talking. You had help learning my signature, Damien said. Who taught you to forge a ghost? My teachers are older than either of us. They don't like to be named. Damien's gaze slid to the emblem. They already were. Silence. Then, amused, if the crest gives you comfort, keep it. Jules's voice, thin but steady. Why me? Because you were close to someone who cared more about truth than survival, Elias said. She would have lived if you'd minded your own business. Something in Jules's face sharpened, the pain clarifying into a single hard line. You killed her. Don't be small, Juliana. I signed documents. The monitors chimed. The handshake hit 86% and held. Mads's hands were blurs. Almost. Damien stepped closer to the console. The chip's decrypt blossomed fully. Dates, routing tables, the spine of a creature built from stolen names and borrowed authority. He recognized rhythms the way a musician recognizes a song from the first two notes. His father's habits, his own, mimicked and mirrored and fed into a machine that would have devoured him and called it justice. Elias, he said. You're about to watch something you won't understand. And what is that? Elias asked lightly. Me, changing my mind. He nodded once. Mads hit enter. The room's air seemed to compress. Instead of finishing the handshake, the system folded it, took the tunnel intended to hollow out Damien's life and turned it back toward its mouth. The mesh in Jules's head stopped being a key and became a mirror. The chip, half fossil, half map, bridged past and present, and for a heartbeat the network forgot who owned whom. On a dozen servers in a bank vault beneath Geneva, permissions inverted. The override the serpent trident had prepared became a trigger of a different kind. Back doors opened back the way they came. The shell accounts shivered, then froze. A ledger unfurled, and with it, a message attached to every copy, written in an old, careful hand that did not belong to Elias. If you're reading this, the Suns are at war. Choose the one who builds. Mads let out a noise halfway between a cheer and a sob. It worked. God, it worked. I just turned their fire hose into a fountain in your garden. On the speaker, Elias's voice lost the lacquer. What did you do? Nothing, Damien said. I just stopped being polite. The shelter door above rang like a bell. Henrik Vale stepped through it before anyone could pull a weapon, hair singed, face drawn and pale but very much alive. He took in the room with one sweep of old instincts and gave Damien a short nod that meant later and good to see you breathing and sorry I took so long. He moved to the console. How long until they reroute? Mads glanced at the clock. Minutes. Maybe less. We need distribution. Damien was already moving. He grabbed a sat phone that was only a phone when it had to be and connected to 3 numbers that had never failed him. A regulator who hated being lied to, a prosecutor whose only religion was paper, and a journalist who admired the truth like a dangerous animal and knew how to feed it without losing her hand. He sent the ledger. He sent the crest. He sent the audit trail that began with a father and forked into 2 sons and then into something neither had intended. He sent a note with 6 words. This will burn. Please stand back. On the speaker, Elias's breath rasped. You'd indict yourself to spite me? I'd tell the truth to save something you sold, Damien said, and meant it. Alarms began to sing on the other end of the line, Elias's line, not theirs. The invisible board shifted like a city map redrawn in an earthquake. Accounts locked. Warrants whispered. 1,000 decisions made by people who had been waiting, quietly, for permission to do their jobs. Elias recovered enough to sneer. You've made a mess. Sometimes mess is the exact shape of clean, Henrik said dryly. Jules tried to sit up. Damien was there before she got far, a hand at her shoulder, as if the gesture had been practiced for years he hadn't lived yet. Don't, he said. It's over. No, she said softly. It's beginning again. Just not their way. She looked at the screen. The crest glowed on it, then faded as the connection frayed. Elias spoke one more time, and now the voice was very young and very tired. They won't forget you did this. I'm counting on it, Damien said. The line went dead. The world kept going. It always does, even when men who think they are the world lose their footing. Mads leaned back, wiped his face with the hem of his shirt, and let out a ragged laugh. We should move. A lot of very interested people just learned our address. Henrik's smile was a split second long. Already have 3 new ones warmed. Damien turned to Jules. Can you travel? I can walk, she said. Running will be ugly. Then we'll walk. He helped her up. For a moment they stood close, not an embrace, not yet, something more like a promise made without the insult of words. They climbed the narrow stairs. The dry cleaner above smelled like solvent and old soap. Sunlight lay in gold bars on the floor. Outside, sirens threaded the street. Not for them, not yet, for a city waking to a story none of it had asked to be part of. On the sidewalk, a child tugged at his mother's hand and stared at the men and the girl who looked like she wasn't entirely back from wherever she'd been. The mother smiled apologetically. The child waved. Jules, dazed, waved back. The simple, uncalculated motion broke something inside Damien he hadn't realized was still brittle. Henrik's phone buzzed once. He checked, nodded, and showed it to Damien. A headline already blooming on 3 continents, the crest burned into the center like a brand. Words like laundering and override and conspiracy elbowed each other. A line deep in the copy noted that an unnamed source had provided a ledger detailed enough to make perjury feel like a hobby. You'll be subpoenaed, Henrik said, not unkindly. I'll be there, Damien answered. They started walking east, toward a car that would not be found because it didn't exist for most of the people paid to find cars. At the corner, Damien's phone rang. Unknown number. He looked at it and for the first time since the first ring, he wasn't afraid of what answer lived on the other side. He tapped accept. The voice was the old man's. Weathered, spare, a compass needle that had seen too many maps. "You were supposed to pick a side," he said. "I did. Not the one they intended." "No," Damien said, and his mouth ghosted a smile that wasn't for the old man. "The one worth losing for." A pause. Then, almost amused, "They'll change crests. Then we'll learn the new one." The line clicked off. Across the street, a news truck howled past, chasing a rumor. Above them, a plane drew a white line toward another continent where vaults were opening to air for the first time in decades. Jules squeezed his hand, brief, fierce. "What now?" "Now we fix what we can," he said. "And the rest." He glanced down, the city reflected in her eyes and his name not. "We hunt it." The light changed. They stepped off the curb. 2 blocks later, the phone rang again, one more unknown. He let it vibrate in his palm, a heartbeat that belonged to a world too large to fit in his pocket. He answered without slowing. The voice on this one wasn't old at all. "Mr. Reese," it said, precise and young and very calm. "On behalf of a few interested parties, congratulations. You passed your audition." He stopped walking. Jules felt him stop and turned. "Audition for what?" he asked. "For the seat your father kept empty," the voice said. "The one your brother wanted. The one we never offer twice." He watched a bus glide by, its windows full of faces all going somewhere else. "No," Damien said and hung up. The line went quiet. He slid the phone back into his pocket. The sirens thinned. Somewhere a church bell counted noon. He and Jules moved with the crowd, unremarkable, 2 more figures in a city that had already begun telling their story to itself. Behind them, in the shadow of a lamppost, a small metal card lay on the concrete. The trident and serpent had been burned off with a surgeon's patience. In the shallow gouge left behind, a new mark was scratched by hand, a simple circle, unadorned. The wind nudged it once. It rang like a coin falling into a well.